I sent out my birthday invites well in advance, only for my brother to announce his barbecue party on the same day. No one from my family showed up, not even my husband or daughter. As I cut the cake, my phone buzzed with a message. "Call me. Urgent." I looked at the screen and smiled. 18 missed calls. My mother's Facebook post appeared in my feed at 10:47 p.m., 3 hours after my birthday dinner should have ended. "Such a wonderful evening with Grant and the family. Wish our other daughter could have joined us to help coordinate things, but I'm sure she had her reasons. Family gatherings are the best." The phrase "help coordinate" made my hands tremble as I screenshot the post. Even on my own birthday, my function was management, not celebration. The 37 likes and 12 supportive comments from extended family members who had no idea what really happened felt like salt in an open wound. I set my phone face down on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling of my bedroom. David's side of the bed remained empty at nearly 11 o'clock. He was probably still at Grant's backyard barbecue, the spontaneous gathering that had somehow become more important than my 40th birthday celebration. The silence in our suburban home felt oppressive, broken only by the distant hum of the central air conditioning and Tiffany's music filtering through her bedroom door. The irony of my mother's post cut deeper with each passing minute. She wished I could have joined them to help coordinate things. Not to celebrate with them, not because they missed me, but because they needed my organizational skills. On the night that should have marked 4 decades of my life, my own family viewed me as absent staff rather than the guest of honor at my own milestone celebration. Earlier that morning, I had awakened at 5:30 a.m. with the same mixture of excitement and nervous energy that had carried me through the past 6 weeks of birthday planning. My phone displayed 3 different calendars in perfect synchronization. David's court schedule showing a deliberately cleared evening, Tiffany's activities arranged around our family celebration, and my own client meetings strategically scheduled to end early. The kitchen counter bore witness to my organizational prowess with color-coded sticky notes marking every detail of our coordinated lives. The coffee maker had begun its programmed brewing cycle at exactly 5:28 a.m. I prepared David's morning beverage with laboratory precision. 1 3/4 scoops of French roast heated to 185 degrees, finished with heavy cream that cost more per ounce than most people spent on their entire morning routine. This attention to detail had become my signature, the invisible foundation that allowed everyone else's preferences to flourish without consideration or acknowledgement. Tiffany's lunch assembly followed the same meticulous pattern. Turkey and Swiss on whole grain bread with crusts removed, apple slices treated with lemon juice to prevent browning, organic granola bars that made me wince at the grocery checkout but kept her satisfied. Each component reflected years of accumulated knowledge about her preferences, dietary requirements and social dynamics. The handwritten note tucked into her lunch bag's side pocket continued a tradition my own mother had maintained throughout my childhood, though I wondered if Tiffany appreciated these gestures or simply expected them as part of her daily routine. The Meridian Healthcare presentation materials spread across our breakfast table represented months of strategic planning. Hospital system rebranding required delicate balance between clinical authority and human approachability. Landing this account would constitute my largest professional victory to date, potentially transforming our family's financial trajectory. Yet as I reviewed the carefully crafted pitch, I recognized the familiar pattern of my achievements serving primarily as resources for other people's benefit rather than sources of personal recognition. Grant's morning crisis call had arrived at 7:15 a.m., precisely timed to coincide with my drive to Tiffany's school. His voice carried that familiar combination of panic and entitlement as he detailed his latest business catastrophe. The food truck venture had imploded overnight when his partner abandoned the operation with half the equipment, leaving Grant responsible for 15 angry customers who had paid deposits for catering services he could no longer provide. "I need help with the tax implications, customer refunds, maybe some damage control strategy," he explained, his tone assuming my availability for weekend emergency consultation. "You're so organized with this stuff, and I figured we could figure out a game plan." Tiffany rolled her eyes from the passenger seat, her expression perfectly capturing my internal response to Uncle Grant's predictable crisis management approach. At 15, she had witnessed sufficient iterations of his spectacular failures to recognize the established pattern. Grant created elaborate disasters that somehow became my responsibility to resolve while he moved forward to his next entrepreneurial adventure. I calculated the hours required to untangle his business failure while navigating through our neighborhood's morning traffic. Tax documentation, customer communication, legal consultation, financial restructuring. Probably 6 or 7 hours of work during a weekend I had reserved for finalizing my birthday celebration and preparing client presentations. Yet I heard myself responding with the same accommodating phrase I had used dozens of times over the past decade. I'll see what I can do. That evening, I had settled into my home office with Earl Grey tea and open design software to create invitations for my 40th birthday celebration. The milestone carried significance beyond simple chronological progression. 4 decades of life experience, 15 years building a successful marketing consultancy, 18 years of marriage to David, 16 years of dedicated motherhood. These accomplishments deserved recognition in an environment that reflected their importance. Bella Luna represented the perfect venue choice. David and I had celebrated our first anniversary at the intimate downtown wine bar, back when we believed perfect evenings could be orchestrated through careful planning rather than hoped for through circumstance. The establishment offered sophisticated atmosphere without pretension. Exposed brick walls, professionally curated lighting, extensive wine selection, and cuisine that impressed through quality rather than complexity. My guest list took shape with methodical precision. Immediate family formed the celebration's core. David, Tiffany, my parents, Grant. David's law firm colleagues who had evolved from professional acquaintances into genuine friendships over years of shared challenges and successes. My most important clients whose business relationships had developed into personal connections built on mutual respect and shared achievement. The Williamses from across the street, who had proven themselves wonderful neighbors through nearly a decade of consistent kindness and community involvement. Electronic RSVPs began arriving within hours of sending the invitations. Each positive response built my anticipation about the celebration and validated my vision of gathering meaningful people in one carefully chosen location. Marcus from my design team confirmed his attendance immediately, expressing enthusiasm about meeting my family members he had heard about through our professional collaboration. Jennifer from account management responded with genuine excitement about the venue selection, mentioning her appreciation for my taste in sophisticated social settings. My parents called that same evening to express their delight about the planned celebration. Mom immediately began discussing wardrobe options and expressing maternal pride about her successful eldest daughter's milestone achievement. Dad marked his calendar with unusual attention to scheduling detail, recognizing the importance of clearing his evening for family celebration rather than business obligations that typically dominated his time allocation. Sunday dinner at my parents' house provided the ideal setting for sharing birthday plans with the complete family group. Their dining room maintained the same classic elegance that had hosted thousands of family meals throughout my childhood. Oak table that bore witness to countless important conversations, china cabinet displaying my grandmother's wedding dishes, an overall atmosphere of continuity that made significant announcements feel appropriately ceremonial. Mom's reaction exceeded my expectations as she listened to my detailed description of the planned evening. 40 years old and look what you've accomplished, she said, reaching across the familiar table to squeeze my hand with genuine maternal affection. Your own business, this beautiful family, such a successful life. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. Dad nodded approvingly from his traditional position at the table's head, his businessman's instincts appreciating both the venue selection and the underlying celebration of achievement. Bella Luna represents a classy choice, he added with the kind of approval that carried weight in our family's value system. You've always demonstrated excellent judgment in these matters. Grant appeared distracted throughout my presentation, scrolling through his smartphone with the casual disregard he had shown for family moments since adolescence. When pressed for his response to the birthday plans, he looked up briefly and offered a thumbs-up gesture that could have indicated anything from genuine enthusiasm to polite acknowledgement of information he had not actually absorbed. David squeezed my hand beneath the table and whispered his commitment to blocking off the entire evening for my celebration. His law firm demanded brutal scheduling commitments, but he made clear that my milestone birthday took absolute priority over any client emergency or partner obligation that might arise to compete for his attention. For the first time in recent memory, I found myself positioned at the center of positive family attention. Not as the coordinator managing everyone else's competing needs and obligations, not as the problem solver responsible for fixing Grant's latest entrepreneurial disaster, but as the celebrated daughter, wife, and mother whose achievements and milestone deserved recognition and honor from the people who mattered most in my carefully constructed life. The sensation felt intoxicating, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds I had not realized were blocking my perspective on family dynamics and personal worth. The warmth I had felt during my birthday announcement lasted exactly 17 days. 3 weeks after sending out my carefully crafted invitations, Grant arrived at our regular Sunday dinner carrying a leather-bound notebook that I had never seen before. He moved with the kind of restless energy that typically preceded his most ambitious disasters, the same manic enthusiasm that had launched his failed food truck venture and his short-lived landscaping business. "I have something amazing to share with everyone," he announced before Mom had even finished setting the table. His grin stretched across his face like a child who had discovered the location of hidden Christmas presents. The notebook landed on our family dining table with a soft thud that somehow felt ominous, though I could not yet articulate why. Grant flipped through pages covered with sketches, diagrams, and handwritten notes in his familiar sprawling script. Fire pit layouts, seating arrangements, activity stations, beverage logistics. The level of detail surprised me. My brother, who typically operated through spontaneous inspiration rather than systematic planning, had apparently invested serious time in whatever scheme he was about to unveil. "I am throwing the most epic backyard barbecue extravaganza this neighborhood has ever seen," he declared, spreading his drawings across the mahogany surface where my grandmother's china typically resided. Fire pits for ambience, craft beer stations with local brewery partnerships, live acoustic music from that guitarist who plays at the farmer's market, cornhole tournaments with actual prizes, and enough food to feed half the city. The date fell from his lips like a casual afterthought. Saturday, August 18th. My fork clattered against my plate. August 18th. My birthday. The same Saturday evening when I expected to be sitting at Bella Luna, surrounded by people celebrating 4 decades of my life. For several seconds, the dining room fell silent except for the grandfather clock's steady ticking in the hallway. "Grant," I said, my voice carefully controlled despite the adrenaline surge flooding my system, "that's my birthday. We already have plans for that evening." He looked at me with genuine confusion, as if my milestone celebration had somehow slipped his memory despite being announced just weeks earlier. Then his expression shifted to dismissive amusement, the same look he had given me since childhood when my concerns interfered with his grander visions. "Come on, sis," he said, waving his hand as if brushing away an insignificant obstacle. "It's just dinner. We can celebrate you anytime. But this barbecue is going to be legendary. People will talk about it for years." The casual dismissal of my 40th birthday as just dinner landed like a physical blow. 6 weeks of planning, careful venue selection, thoughtful guest curation, all reduced to a minor inconvenience that could be easily rescheduled to accommodate his spontaneous party idea. I opened my mouth to protest, then realized that everyone else at the table was staring at Grant's drawings rather than registering my obvious distress. Mom leaned forward with the kind of animated interest I had not witnessed since Grant's high school football championship 20 years earlier. Her eyes sparkled as she examined his sketches, asking detailed questions about menu options, musical entertainment, and guest capacity. "Should I call your Aunt Patricia and Uncle Robert? They would love something like this. And what about the Hendersons next door? They have that beautiful lawn if you need overflow space." Dad nodded approvingly from his position at the table's head, already mentally calculating logistics and potential expenses with the same attention he devoted to successful business ventures. "How long has it been since we had a real family gathering with outdoor activities? Your mother and I were just saying we miss those summer barbecues we used to host when you kids were younger." Even David, who had promised to prioritize my birthday celebration above all competing obligations, leaned forward with obvious curiosity. "What kind of craft beer selection are you planning? And is there enough space for kids to run around if Tiffany wants to invite friends?" I sat frozen in my chair, watching my carefully planned milestone celebration transform into background noise against Grant's improvised spectacle. The conversation flowed around me as if I had become invisible, each family member contributing enthusiastic suggestions for improving his party while my own birthday dinner faded into irrelevance. The drive home from my parents' house passed in uncomfortable silence. David focused on traffic while I stared out the passenger window, processing what had just occurred. When we pulled into our driveway, he finally spoke. Grant's party does sound pretty fun, he said carefully, testing my reaction. Maybe we could do both events. Your dinner first, then swing by his place for dessert and socializing. The suggestion that my birthday dinner should serve as an appetizer to Grant's main event made my chest tight with suppressed anger. I managed a non-committal response and escaped to our bedroom, where I closed the door and sat on the edge of our king-sized bed, trying to understand why this felt like more than simple scheduling conflict. Later that evening, I overheard Tiffany's phone conversation with Emma through her bedroom door. Their teenage voices carried clearly through the thin walls, discussing weekend plans with the kind of excitement that only adolescents could generate about social gatherings. Uncle Grant's party is going to be absolutely amazing, Tiffany gushed. Fire pits, live music, actual activities instead of just sitting around. It will be so much better than some stuffy restaurant where we have to listen to boring adult conversations all night. Emma's response was muffled, but I caught enough words to understand she was asking about the timing conflict with my birthday celebration. Tiffany's reply came without hesitation or apparent concern for my feelings. Oh, that's the same night as Mom's dinner thing, but she'll understand. He always does. Mom's really flexible about stuff like this, and Uncle Grant's party will be way more fun anyway. The casual dismissal of my feelings, delivered in my own daughter's voice, cut deeper than Grant's original announcement had. Tiffany expected me to accommodate everyone else's preferences because that was my established pattern. The reliable coordinator who adjusted her own needs to facilitate other people's happiness. The understanding mother who smiled through disappointment to maintain family harmony. I retreated to my home office and opened my laptop, intending to work on client presentations as a distraction from the evening's developments. Instead, I found an email from my assistant that made my situation more complicated. 3 of my biggest clients had apparently heard about Grant's party through mutual business acquaintances and were asking whether it would be awkward to attend both events or if they should choose one. The Meridian Healthcare account director had mentioned feeling caught in an uncomfortable social dilemma. The Blackstone tech executives wondered if there was family tension they should avoid. My Riverside development contact asked directly whether my brother's gathering would offer better networking opportunities than my birthday dinner. I stared at my computer screen, absorbing the implications of their inquiries. Grant had not simply scheduled a competing event on my birthday. He had created a social situation that positioned my carefully planned celebration as the less appealing option. My own professional contacts, people who supposedly valued our business relationship, were weighing my milestone birthday against his improvised barbecue and finding mine lacking. The realization settled over me like cold water. This was not about scheduling conflict or family coordination challenges. This was about hierarchy, attention, and the fundamental question of whose happiness mattered most in our family system. Grant's spontaneous party idea had somehow become the important event that everyone wanted to attend, while my 40th birthday dinner had been relegated to an obligation that people hoped to minimize or avoid entirely. I closed my laptop and walked to the kitchen, where I poured myself a glass of wine from the bottle David and I had been saving for a special occasion. As I sat at our breakfast table, surrounded by the color-coded sticky notes that organized everyone else's lives, I realized that the perfect life illusion I had maintained for so many years was beginning to show its first visible crack. The wine glass sat empty beside my laptop as I stared at the color-coded sticky notes scattered across our breakfast table. Each note represented someone else's priority, someone else's schedule, someone else's needs carefully managed and coordinated by my invisible labor. The irony was not lost on me that I could orchestrate the complex logistics of everyone else's lives but somehow could not secure their presence at my own birthday celebration. Tuesday morning brought the first official defection. My phone rang while I was reviewing client presentations, and Sarah's name appeared on the screen. My cousin had always been reliably family-oriented, the type who never missed reunions or milestone celebrations. Her apologetic tone immediately put me on edge. "I feel absolutely terrible about this," she began, her voice carrying genuine regret mixed with something else I could not quite identify. "But after hearing about Grant's barbecue, I think it might be more appropriate for the kids. You know how antsy they get in restaurants, especially somewhere as upscale as Bella Luna." The reasoning felt carefully constructed, as if she had rehearsed the explanation to minimize offense while justifying her decision. She continued explaining how Grant's party sounded more family-oriented, with outdoor activities and casual atmosphere that would accommodate children better than an intimate wine bar celebration. The kids would be bored sitting through dinner conversation all evening, she added, unknowingly echoing Tiffany's earlier assessment of my birthday plans. And honestly, it has been so long since we had a real family gathering where everyone could just relax and have fun. I managed to respond graciously, thanking her for letting me know and expressing understanding about her children's needs. After ending the call, I sat at my kitchen counter absorbing the implications of her defection. Sarah had not simply chosen Grant's party over mine. She had framed my milestone birthday celebration as the inferior option for genuine family bonding. Wednesday brought 2 more cancellations via email. David's law partners, colleagues I had carefully included in my guest list based on years of professional social interaction, sent regrets mentioning prior commitments that had somehow materialized since Grant's announcement. The timing seemed suspiciously convenient, though their messages maintained appropriate politeness about schedule conflicts and disappointment about missing the celebration. Each cancellation felt like erosion of my social foundation. I had spent weeks crafting a guest list that represented the various important relationships in my life. Professional colleagues who had become friends, family members who supposedly valued our connections, neighbors who had shared years of community interaction. Watching these carefully cultivated relationships crumble under pressure from Grant's competing event revealed something unsettling about their actual depth and commitment. Wednesday evening brought a different kind of betrayal. I discovered David researching Grant's venue location on his laptop. Street view images of the neighborhood displayed across the screen along with driving directions and parking information. When I asked about his internet browsing, he minimized the window with casual dismissiveness. Just curious about his setup, David explained, his tone suggesting innocuous interest rather than active planning. Grant always goes overboard with these things. I wanted to see what kind of space he is working with. The explanation felt insufficient given the detailed research he had apparently conducted. When I pressed him about our evening plans and his commitment to my birthday dinner, his response carried diplomatic careful that set off internal alarm bells. Of course I will be at your dinner, honey. That goes without saying. I am just trying to understand the logistics if we wanted to stop by Grant's place afterward for dessert or socializing. The suggestion that my birthday dinner should serve as a brief prelude to his brother's main event made my stomach contract with suppressed anger. David was hedging his bets, preparing contingency plans in case my celebration looked like social failure compared to Grant's spectacle. My own husband was already planning our exit strategy from my own birthday party. Thursday's weekly shopping trip with my mother revealed another layer of painful truth. As we navigated the grocery store aisles, she mentioned with casual excitement that she had already purchased a new outfit for Grant's party. A flowing sundress in cheerful floral print, perfect for outdoor summer gatherings and the kind of relaxed social atmosphere he was promising. It will be so nice to wear something comfortable for a change, she said, examining produce with the same attention she devoted to fashion decisions. These formal restaurant dinners always make me feel like I need to dress up and watch my posture all evening. When I asked about her plans for my birthday celebration, confusion flickered across her face for several seconds, as if she had forgotten about the prior commitment entirely. Then recognition dawned with uncomfortable clarity. "Oh, I am sure I have something in my closet that will work for both events," she replied, already moving on to examine tomatoes with renewed interest. "Maybe that navy blazer I wore to your father's company dinner last year." The assumption embedded in her response crystallized everything I had been dreading. My mother had already decided she would attend both celebrations, but Grant's party held primary importance worthy of new clothing and excited anticipation. My milestone birthday warranted whatever leftover outfit might be appropriate for brief appearance before the real festivities began. Friday night brought the final confirmation of my worst fears. David suggested we arrange a family meeting to coordinate schedules and logistics for both events. Grant arrived at our house carrying the same leather notebook that had started this nightmare, now filled with additional pages of detailed planning and organizational charts. He spread his timeline across our dining room table with the confidence of someone presenting a successful business proposal. The schedule showed how people could attend my dinner from 7 to 8:30. Allowing sufficient time to migrate to his party for what he described as the real fun. He had calculated driving times between venues, researched parking availability near both locations, and even developed contingency plans for weather-related complications. This way everyone gets the best of both worlds, Grant explained, his tone suggesting he was solving a complex logistical challenge rather than dismantling my birthday celebration. Dinner provides the elegant family time, then we transition to the party for music, activities, and real socializing. He had mapped out the evening with military precision, transforming my carefully planned milestone celebration into an appetizer course preceding his main event. Every detail of his presentation demonstrated hours of preparation and strategic thinking, the same energy and attention he had never invested in my birthday despite 6 weeks of advance notice. Sitting at my own dining room table, listening to my brother redesign my 40th birthday as a brief intermission in his social spectacular, I finally understood the complete scope of my defeat. This was not about scheduling conflict or family coordination challenges. Grant had systematically positioned himself as the primary social attraction while reducing my milestone celebration to an obligation people hoped to minimize. The realization settled over me with terrible clarity. I had already lost this battle before it had truly begun. My family had chosen their preferred celebration, and my birthday dinner had become nothing more than a preliminary event they would endure before attending the gathering they actually wanted to experience. The silence in our house stretched through the afternoon like a physical presence. I sat in my home office reviewing final details for the evening that no longer felt like a celebration but rather an ordeal I would somehow need to endure. The guest confirmations I had collected over recent weeks now seemed like cruel artifacts from a more optimistic time when I believed my 40th birthday would actually matter to the people who supposedly loved me most. David had departed at 5 o'clock with a canvas tote bag filled with tools and supplies, claiming Grant needed assistance with party setup logistics. His promise to arrive at Bella Luna by 7 sharp felt hollow, delivered with the distracted tone of someone whose attention was already elsewhere. He kissed my forehead absently, the same gesture he might have given while leaving for any routine appointment, and disappeared into the garage without looking back. Tiffany had vanished even earlier, announcing she would get ready at Emma's house before both families attended Grant's barbecue together. She grabbed an overnight bag with practiced efficiency, avoiding eye contact as she explained the arrangement. The casual dismissal of my birthday dinner had become so normalized that she no longer felt the need to offer even perfunctory apologies or acknowledgement of the conflict. Standing alone in my bedroom at 6 o'clock, I faced the mirror and began applying makeup with hands that trembled despite my efforts at composure. The black dress I had chosen weeks earlier hung on the closet door, elegant fabric that had once excited me about the evening ahead. Now it resembled armor for a battle I had already lost, formal wear for a funeral where I would be both mourner and deceased. My reflection revealed carefully concealed exhaustion and disappointment that no amount of cosmetic artistry could completely disguise. The woman staring back at me looked older than her years, worn down by the accumulated weight of accommodating everyone else's preferences while neglecting her own emotional needs. I applied lipstick with mechanical precision, wondering if anyone would actually be present to notice the effort I had invested in my appearance. The house felt cavernous as I gathered my purse and car keys. Rooms that typically buzzed with family activity now echoed with hollow silence, broken only by the refrigerator's mechanical hum and the distant sound of neighbors preparing for their own Saturday evening activities. I locked the front door behind me and walked to my car, knowing I might return later to the same empty silence that surrounded me now. Bella Luna's intimate atmosphere welcomed me with warm lighting and the gentle buzz of early dinner conversation. I arrived 30 minutes before our reservation time, hoping to establish some dignity by serving as the composed hostess greeting guests as they arrived. The reality of my situation became immediately apparent when Antonio, the sommelier, approached our reserved table with his professional smile already beginning to falter. The table setting for 10 people looked absurdly optimistic in the face of my current circumstances. Antonio's experienced eyes took inventory of the empty chairs and reached the same conclusion I had been avoiding for weeks. Without being asked, he quietly began removing place settings with the practiced discretion of someone who had witnessed similar social disappointments before. "Perhaps we should start with a more intimate arrangement," he suggested diplomatically, reducing the table to 2 remaining settings. Additional places can be added as guests arrive throughout the evening. When I explained that people might still appear despite their absence, Antonio's gentle nod carried the weight of professional experience with disappointed expectations. He had clearly observed enough failed celebrations to recognize the signs of abandonment disguised as scheduling complications. His kindness made the situation more painful rather than less. The tiramisu cake sat displayed on the restaurant's dessert counter, for layers of mascarpone perfection that had cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. Under the carefully positioned spotlights, it looked magnificent and tragic simultaneously, a beautiful monument to my own irrelevance in the lives of people who should have prioritized my milestone celebration above competing social opportunities. Marcus from my design team arrived first, precisely at 7 o'clock with the punctuality that had made our professional collaboration so effective over the years. His genuine confusion about the sparse attendance reflected poorly on my family rather than my planning abilities, though his diplomatic silence spared me the humiliation of explaining their absence in detail. Jennifer from account management appeared 15 minutes later carrying a bottle of Prosecco she had clearly purchased from Target's wine section on her way to the restaurant. Her tactless curiosity about missing family members demonstrated the kind of social awareness that made her effective with clients but occasionally uncomfortable in personal situations. Despite her blunt questioning, her presence represented more commitment to my celebration than my own blood relatives had demonstrated. The Williamses from across the street arrived together, exchanging concerned glances as they realized they would be occupying seats intended for my parents. Mrs. Williams squeezed my shoulder with wordless sympathy, while her husband made gentle conversation that avoided direct reference to the obvious family dysfunction surrounding my birthday celebration. Their genuine care for my well-being stood in stark contrast to the calculated indifference my relatives had displayed. These accidental guests connected to me through nothing more substantial than professional proximity and neighborly politeness, had chosen to honor their commitment to my celebration while people who supposedly loved me had found more appealing alternatives. The irony was not lost on me that strangers who cared were now sitting in chairs abandoned by family members who should have loved me unconditionally. We ordered appetizers and made conversation that deliberately avoided the elephant in the room. Marcus shared updates about our upcoming client campaigns. Jennifer described her recent vacation plans. The Williamses discussed neighborhood developments and mutual acquaintances. Everyone participated in the elaborate social fiction that this was a normal birthday celebration rather than the emotional disaster it had obviously become. Our main courses arrived as the sun began setting outside Bella Luna's front windows. The food was exceptional, prepared with the attention to detail that had influenced my venue selection weeks earlier. Under different circumstances, I would have savored every bite while surrounded by laughter and meaningful conversation with people who genuinely wanted to celebrate my achievements and milestone birthday. Instead, I mechanically consumed perfectly prepared pasta while monitoring my phone for signs of the family members who had promised to attend but were obviously engaged in activities they considered more worthy of their time and attention. The irony of my situation was not subtle. I was experiencing the loneliest birthday celebration of my adult life while surrounded by people who had chosen to be present rather than abandoning me for more entertaining alternatives. As we finished our main course, my phone erupted with the desperate buzzing that had become familiar over recent weeks. David's contact photo appeared repeatedly on my screen, each unanswered call building a symphony of panic that I could hear even through my purse's fabric lining. The timing struck me as perfect. Exactly the moment when his loyalty to Grant's party had presumably collapsed into crisis management requiring my immediate attention and problem-solving abilities. Instead of answering, I raised my wine glass toward my unexpected celebration companions and smiled with a freedom that surprised me with its genuineness. For the first time in years, I was choosing my own priorities over someone else's emergency. The phone continued its frantic buzzing, but I had finally discovered the profound power that lived within deliberate silence. The silence that followed my decision to ignore David's frantic calls felt profound and liberating. I finished the tiramisu cake slowly, savoring each bite while my phone continued its desperate buzzing inside my purse. Marcus, Jennifer, and the Williamses exchanged glances but respected my obvious choice to remain disconnected from whatever crisis was demanding my immediate attention. After we settled the dinner bill and said our goodbyes in Bella Luna's parking lot, I drove home through suburban streets filled with the warm glow of family gatherings visible through lit windows. Other people were enjoying Saturday evening celebrations with loved ones who had actually chosen to be present. The contrast between their seemingly normal family dynamics and my own dysfunction felt stark and painful. Our house remained empty when I arrived, just as hollow and echoing as it had been when I left. David's absence spoke volumes about his priorities and commitment to our marriage. Tiffany's decision to spend the night at Emma's house rather than acknowledge my birthday demonstrated how thoroughly I had been erased from my own family's consciousness. Sunday morning arrived gray and overcast, matching my emotional state as I sat at our kitchen table with strong coffee and my laptop. The color-coded sticky notes that usually organized everyone else's schedules now felt like evidence of my own irrelevance. I had spent years managing the administrative details of their lives while they pursued activities and relationships that apparently mattered more than showing basic respect for my milestone celebration. Opening my laptop, I began what I would later recognize as the most methodical documentation project of my professional career. My 15 years in marketing had taught me that narrative control required evidence, and I intended to collect every piece of digital proof that revealed the truth about my family's betrayal. David's Instagram account became my starting point. His stories from the previous evening told a complete chronological tale of betrayal, each timestamp corresponding to moments when he should have been sitting across from me at Bella Luna. The first image showed him laughing with Grant at exactly 7:15, the precise time our reservation had begun. His genuine smile and relaxed posture revealed someone who had no regrets about his choice to abandon his wife's birthday dinner. I screenshot everything with clinical precision, creating a digital archive that would preserve the evidence long after the stories expired from social media platforms. The group photos at 8 o'clock displayed my entire family having the time of their lives, faces glowing with happiness and celebration that had nothing to do with honoring my 40th birthday. The final post appeared at 8:45, just minutes before David's panic calling began, featuring the caption, "When family comes together," accompanied by heart emojis and hashtags celebrating Grant's successful gathering. Each image felt like a digital knife, but I saved them all with the methodical approach I typically reserved for client presentations. This documentation would serve purposes I had not yet fully articulated, but instinctively understood would become important in ways that extended beyond simple record-keeping. The voicemail analysis required more time and attention to detail. David had left 18 separate messages between 8:30 and 11:45, creating an audio documentary of consequences meeting entitlement in real time. I transcribed key phrases from each recording, noting the evolution of his tone and priorities as Grant's party apparently dissolved into crisis. The first messages carried casual dismissal disguised as inclusion. "Grant's party is absolutely amazing, you should see this setup. And wish you were here to experience this with us," suggested someone who believed I should feel grateful for being informed about the superior celebration I had missed while sitting alone at my own birthday dinner. By message 7, concern had replaced casual updates. "The catering truck just broke down and Grant's having a complete meltdown," revealed the first signs of trouble in paradise. Messages 9 through 12 documented escalating panic as the party's infrastructure collapsed and guests began questioning the evening's organization and planning. The final voicemails captured pure desperation. "Everyone's looking at me like I should know how to fix this," and "Grant keeps asking where you are and why you're not answering your phone," demonstrated how quickly my family's dismissal had transformed into urgent need for my problem-solving abilities. The irony was perfect. They had abandoned my celebration for Grant's superior gathering, then expected me to rescue them when his event failed to meet expectations. I organized these audio files by timestamp, creating what would become my favorite evidence of karmic justice. The complete arc from dismissive celebration to panicked crisis management told a story more compelling than any angry confrontation could have achieved. My mother's Facebook activity provided additional documentation that revealed family dynamics with brutal clarity. Her post from the previous evening had appeared while I was driving home from my solitary birthday dinner, the timing suggesting she had prioritized social media documentation over any concern about my absence from Grant's gathering. "Such a wonderful evening with Grant and the family," she had written, accompanied by photos showing everyone except me enjoying outdoor festivities. "Wish our other daughter could have joined us to help coordinate things, but I'm sure she had her reasons. Family gatherings are the best." The phrase "help coordinate" crystallized everything I had suspected about my role in family dynamics. Even on my own birthday, even after choosing Grant's party over my milestone celebration, my mother viewed my absence primarily as a missed opportunity for event management assistance. I existed as family staff rather than beloved daughter deserving celebration and recognition. I printed the post, highlighted the key phrases that revealed these dynamics, and added the document to a growing folder labeled Documentation on my laptop. The evidence was speaking louder than any emotional confrontation ever could, creating an objective record of patterns I had been experiencing subjectively for years. Tiffany's TikTok account provided unexpected additional evidence of the collective betrayal. Her stories from Grant's party showed everyone laughing, dancing, and engaging in activities that looked genuinely fun and celebratory. The contrast with my solitary birthday dinner was stark and painful to observe, but I screenshot everything for completeness. Her final post cut deepest with the casual cruelty that only teenagers can deliver without apparent awareness of their impact. "When your family knows how to party but your mom chooses boring restaurant dinners," she had written, posting the observation for her 200 followers to see and judge. The comment reduced my carefully planned milestone celebration to a personal failing rather than acknowledging the family dysfunction that had created the situation. According to my own daughter, I had chosen boring restaurant dining over fun family celebration, completely inverting the reality of Grant hijacking my birthday for his own social purposes. Each piece of documentation revealed layers of dismissal, entitlement, and casual cruelty that I had been absorbing for years without fully recognizing their cumulative impact. The evidence collection process was teaching me about patterns in my family relationships that extended far beyond this single birthday betrayal. As I organized files and highlighted key phrases, I began to understand that this documentation served purposes beyond simple record-keeping. The evidence was revealing truths about my family's fundamental attitudes toward my worth and importance that would inform every interaction moving forward. The morning light filtered through our kitchen windows as I completed my digital archaeology project, creating comprehensive documentation of the previous evening's betrayal with the same thoroughness I typically reserved for major client campaigns. The folder on my laptop contained enough evidence to support a compelling narrative, but documentation alone would not address the fundamental problem I faced. My family had demonstrated their priorities with devastating clarity, and no amount of emotional appeals or confrontational discussions would change their established patterns of behavior. What I required was a different approach entirely, one that leveraged my professional expertise and network relationships to create consequences that matched their actions. Monday morning brought the Meridian Healthcare contract finalization meeting, a milestone that should have generated celebration and recognition from my family members. Instead, I sat alone in my home office reviewing presentation materials while David prepared for his day at the law firm without acknowledging my professional achievement. The contrast between my business success and personal isolation crystallized my understanding of how thoroughly my accomplishments had been minimized within our household dynamics. The healthcare executives I met with that morning treated me with the respect and attention that had been absent from my birthday celebration. They valued my strategic insights, appreciated my creative vision, and recognized my expertise in ways my own family had never demonstrated. During our discussion of brand positioning and market penetration strategies, I began to understand that my professional network represented something more valuable than simple business relationships. These connections extended far beyond individual client interactions. The Meridian Healthcare administrators knew medical journalists who covered industry trends and community developments. The hospital system's board members included influential local business leaders who shaped public opinion through their various civic involvements. My work with their rebranding campaign had provided access to decision-makers who understood reputation management and narrative control at levels my family could never comprehend. The Blackstone tech executives I had been consulting with possessed similar network advantages. Their startup environment connected them to venture capital firms that specialized in reputation analysis and risk assessment. These professionals evaluated businesses and individuals based on documented performance patterns, exactly the kind of objective scrutiny that would reveal uncomfortable truths about Grant's consistent failures and my family's enabling behaviors. Rather than plotting elaborate revenge schemes, I simply began nurturing these professional relationships with the same attention and care I had previously devoted to managing my family's logistics. The difference was remarkable. These business contacts responded to my efforts with genuine appreciation, reciprocal support, and meaningful collaboration that enhanced both our professional goals and personal satisfaction. Tuesday brought the first test of my new strategic approach. David approached me during breakfast with his familiar assumption that I would coordinate Tiffany's summer activity schedule, manage her transportation needs, and resolve conflicts between competing commitments. His casual expectation that I would handle these administrative details without question or compensation reflected years of established patterns. "I need you to work out the logistics for Tiffany's soccer camp and her art classes," he explained while reviewing his own calendar on his phone. "The schedules overlap, and someone needs to figure out carpooling arrangements with the other parents." My response surprised both of us with its professional politeness and complete unavailability. "I'm afraid I'm completely buried in client presentations this week," I replied, not looking up from my laptop where I was genuinely reviewing materials for upcoming business meetings. "The Meridian Healthcare campaign requires my full attention, and I simply cannot take on additional projects right now." David's expression shifted from casual expectation to confused frustration, but he could hardly argue with my professional obligations or accuse me of being unreasonable. I was simply a successful consultant with demanding clients who required my expertise and attention. Grant's predictable crisis call arrived Wednesday afternoon, right on schedule with his established pattern of creating problems that somehow became my responsibility to resolve. His food truck business had generated additional complications involving tax obligations, customer complaints, and vendor disputes that required immediate attention from someone with organizational skills and business experience. "I really need your help with this mess," he explained, his voice carrying the familiar mixture of panic and entitlement that had characterized our interactions for decades. "You're so good at figuring out complex situations, and I'm completely overwhelmed by all these legal and financial details." My response maintained the same professional courtesy I would extend to any business acquaintance requesting services outside my availability. "I understand you're facing challenges, but my schedule has become mysteriously inflexible due to client commitments," I replied. "Perhaps you could consult with a professional accountant or business attorney who specializes in these areas." The suggestion that he should pay for expertise rather than expecting free family labor clearly hadn't occurred to him, but my unavailability was presented as circumstantial rather than personal, making it impossible for him to accuse me of being petty or vindictive. Thursday's call from my mother followed the same predictable pattern. She needed someone to organize the family's 4th of July gathering, coordinate menu planning, manage invitation logistics, and ensure that all the administrative details were properly handled. Her assumption that I would automatically volunteer for these responsibilities reflected decades of established expectations. "We haven't had a proper family barbecue in ages," she explained enthusiastically. "I was thinking you could handle the planning since you're so organized and everyone always enjoys the events you coordinate." Work emergencies materialized like magic as I explained my complete unavailability for voluntary event planning. Client deadlines, presentation preparations, and business development activities had consumed my schedule entirely, leaving no capacity for family logistics management. Each refusal was delivered with professional politeness and legitimate business justifications that made accusations of selfishness impossible. I wasn't being difficult or uncooperative. I was simply a successful marketing consultant whose professional obligations took priority over volunteer family coordination. Through casual social media monitoring and strategic conversations with mutual acquaintances, I began gathering intelligence about Grant's next grand gesture. The pattern was becoming predictable. Having successfully hijacked my 40th birthday celebration, he was planning another massive event that would position him as the family's primary social coordinator and attention magnet. Sunset Ridge Country Club had been reserved for Saturday, August 22nd, exactly 1 year and 4 weeks after his original birthday sabotage. Professional catering, live band, children's activity stations, and enough premium alcohol to ensure memorable social media documentation. The scale and expense suggested he was planning to outdo his previous party success with an even more elaborate celebration. The family group chat exploded with excitement about Grant's legendary family celebration. Mom posted multiple messages expressing her enthusiasm about the venue selection and asking detailed questions about dress codes and gift expectations. Dad mentioned clearing his calendar well in advance to ensure full participation. Even Tiffany contributed fire emojis and excited comments about bringing friends to experience Uncle Grant's superior party planning abilities. I read their digital enthusiasm with cold satisfaction, understanding exactly how this story would conclude. Grant's pattern of financial irresponsibility and poor planning would inevitably create problems that someone else would be expected to resolve. This time, however, that someone would not be me. My evenings were spent creating a comprehensive dossier documenting Grant's established patterns of family manipulation and financial irresponsibility. 3 failed businesses, each requiring family bailout assistance and creating financial obligations for relatives who had been guilted into providing support. His history of hijacking other people's celebrations and important moments to serve his own attention-seeking purposes. The documented evidence revealed how consistently the family chose Grant's drama over my genuine achievements, prioritizing his emotional needs while dismissing my professional successes and personal milestones. This research project was expanding beyond simple birthday revenge into comprehensive exposure of toxic family dynamics that had shaped our relationships for decades. The documentation process was teaching me about patterns I had been experiencing subjectively but had never analyzed with objective professional scrutiny. Grant's behaviors followed predictable cycles that created chaos requiring outside intervention, positioned him as both victim and hero, and consistently redirected family attention and resources toward his perceived needs while minimizing everyone else's legitimate accomplishments. This wasn't about birthday revenge anymore. The evidence I was assembling would expose a lifetime of manipulative family dynamics with the same professional-grade documentation I typically reserved for major client campaigns. The truth was more damaging than any emotional confrontation could achieve, and I intended to present it with the strategic precision that had made my marketing consultancy successful. The comprehensive dossier I had assembled represented months of strategic preparation disguised as routine professional activity. Every documented pattern, every screenshot, every audio file had been organized with the systematic approach that had made my marketing consultancy successful. The evidence revealed a clear narrative of family dysfunction that extended far beyond simple birthday conflicts, and I intended to present this story with the same precision I typically reserved for major client campaigns. Friday morning arrived with unusual clarity and purpose. I sat in my home office at precisely 8 o'clock, reviewing the final details of what would become the most important communication strategy of my personal life. The email composition required careful attention to tone, timing, and distribution methodology. This was not an emotional outburst or vindictive rant, but rather a professional presentation of documented facts that would allow recipients to draw their own conclusions about the Harrison family dynamics. The subject line required particular consideration. Context for upcoming family event struck the appropriate balance between informative and intriguing, suggesting important information without appearing sensational or inflammatory. The message recipients would understand they were receiving background details that might influence their decision to attend Grant's Country Club celebration. The email body began with a brief explanation of my purpose in sharing this information. I positioned myself as someone providing context rather than seeking sympathy, offering documented evidence rather than emotional appeals. The tone remained consistently professional, presenting facts with the same clinical objectivity I would use in client presentations or business proposals. Screenshots of David's Instagram betrayal formed the foundation of my evidence presentation. The timestamp documentation showed exactly when he had been celebrating with Grant instead of honoring his commitment to my birthday dinner. Each image was annotated with relevant context, explaining the significance of his presence at the competing event while I sat alone at Bella Luna with work colleagues and neighbors who had actually respected their promises to attend. Audio files from David's 18 desperate voicemails provided compelling narrative progression from casual dismissal to panicked crisis management. I had transcribed key phrases and included brief explanatory notes about the timeline of events, allowing recipients to understand how quickly Grant's party had devolved from superior celebration to emergency requiring outside intervention. My mother's Facebook post served as the centerpiece of family dysfunction documentation. Her phrase about wishing I could have joined to help coordinate revealed everything recipients needed to understand about my role in family dynamics. Even on my own birthday, I existed primarily as event management staff rather than beloved daughter deserving celebration and recognition. The distribution list included every person who had been invited to Grant's Country Club gathering, compiled through careful research of his social media announcements and family group chat communications. Professional contacts, extended family members, neighborhood acquaintances, and social connections would all receive the same documented evidence simultaneously, creating comprehensive awareness of the context surrounding this weekend's celebration. I sent the email at exactly 9:15 Friday morning, timing the delivery to coincide with typical coffee and email checking routines. Recipients would encounter this information while making final weekend plans, allowing sufficient time for the evidence to influence their decision-making processes regarding Grant's party attendance. The network effect began operating immediately through channels I had cultivated during my strategic transformation period. The Williamses contacted the Garcias within hours, sharing their first-hand observations of my birthday abandonment and expressing disbelief about the family dynamics the email had revealed. Their genuine concern for my well-being added credibility to the documented evidence, since they had witnessed the events personally. My healthcare clients began discussing the situation within their professional networks, not from malicious intent but from genuine shock about how anyone could treat family members with such casual dismissal during milestone celebrations. Hospital administrators who valued loyalty and professional commitment found the Harrison family behavior particularly disturbing, especially the documented pattern of expecting crisis management services from someone they had just publicly humiliated. The Blackstone tech executives shared the story with their venture capital contacts, framing it as an example of reputation management challenges and the importance of consistent behavioral patterns in relationship evaluation. These professionals understood narrative control and strategic communication, recognizing the sophisticated approach I had used to present damaging information through objective documentation rather than emotional appeals. Word spread through social and professional circles with the efficiency of a perfectly executed marketing campaign. Each person who received my information package naturally shared relevant details with their own network connections, adding layers of commentary and judgment to Grant's developing reputation problems. The truth was distributing itself without requiring additional promotional efforts from me. By noon Friday, I had positioned myself in my home office with excellent coffee and began monitoring the real-time collapse of Grant's social media presence. His Instagram account, which had been building excitement about the legendary family celebration throughout the week, showed the first signs of crisis management as comments began appearing from people who had obviously received my contextual information. Sunset Ridge Country Club quietly removed their Welcome Harrison Family Celebration post from their Instagram account at exactly 2 o'clock, replacing it with generic weekend content that made no mention of any specific events. Their social media manager had clearly received concerning inquiries about the nature of their clients' family dynamics and reputation within the community. Grant's personal social media transformation provided the most satisfying evidence of my strategy's effectiveness. His excited countdown posts and party promotion content disappeared, replaced by a single devastating announcement. Due to unexpected circumstances, today's celebration has been cancelled. Sincere apologies to everyone who was planning to attend. The comments section beneath this announcement became a digital battlefield where people who had received my information package asked pointed questions about family loyalty, celebration priorities, and patterns of manipulative behavior. Grant's attempt to position the cancellation as unexpected circumstances rather than consequences of documented actions generated particular criticism from recipients who understood the actual context. Anonymous commenters who had clearly reviewed my evidence documentation posted observations about the importance of treating family members with respect, especially during milestone celebrations. Others questioned whether someone who would hijack his sister's 40th birthday possessed the judgment necessary for organizing successful social gatherings. My phone began its familiar symphony of desperate communication attempts at exactly 3:30 Friday afternoon. David's contact information appeared first, initiating what would become a pattern of increasingly frantic calls from family members who were experiencing the consequences of their documented behaviors. 7 missed calls from David established his leadership in panic response, followed by 5 attempts from Grant for calls from my mother, and 2 remarkably desperate communications from my father. Dad's participation in emotional crisis management represented unusual deviation from his typical approach of delegating family drama resolution to Mom, suggesting the situation had achieved unprecedented seriousness levels. Each missed call represented a small victory, proof that my strategic revelation had achieved its intended effect with surgical precision. I watched the numbers accumulate on my phone screen while sipping wine from the bottle David and I had been saving for a special occasion, reviewing successful client presentations that demonstrated my professional competence in strategic communication and narrative control. The irony was perfect. My family members who had dismissed my marketing expertise and business achievements were now experiencing the consequences of strategic communication executed with professional precision by someone they had consistently undervalued and taken for granted. The afternoon proceeded with increasing desperation from callers who were discovering that their reputations had been damaged through their own documented behaviors rather than false accusations or emotional manipulation. Truth was proving more destructive than any vindictive revenge scheme could have achieved, and the evidence spoke with authority that no amount of family pressure or guilt manipulation could effectively counter. The desperation escalating through my missed calls created a symphony of consequences that demanded proper appreciation. Saturday evening arrived with golden light filtering through my kitchen windows as I selected the expensive Pinot Grigio from our wine collection, the bottle David and I had been reserving for a truly special occasion. This moment qualified perfectly. I settled into my favorite chair at the kitchen table, opened my laptop to display the voicemail interface, and began listening to 18 messages in chronological order with the methodical approach of a wine connoisseur sampling vintage desperation. Each recording revealed layers of panic, entitlement, and dawning recognition that their documented behaviors had generated consequences they could not manipulate away through family pressure or guilt tactics. David's first 3 messages maintained confident dismissal disguised as reasonable explanation. There seems to be some kind of misunderstanding about the party situation. His voice carried the patronizing tone he typically used when explaining legal concepts to clients he considered intellectually inferior. Obviously, people are getting the wrong impression about family dynamics, and we need to clear this up immediately. Messages 4 through 7 documented his transition from confidence to concern as the scope of my information distribution became apparent. Half the people on Grant's guest list are asking uncomfortable questions about our marriage and family relationships, he admitted, his lawyer's training failing to provide adequate damage control strategies for documented evidence of his own betrayal. The middle recordings captured barely controlled frustration as David realized that his professional reputation might suffer collateral damage from family dysfunction exposure. My law partners are hearing stories about how I abandoned my wife's birthday dinner, he explained with rising panic. This could affect my standing at the firm if clients start questioning my reliability and judgment. Grant's messages provided more direct entertainment value, lacking David's legal training in diplomatic language construction. His first recording opened with profanity-laced accusations about sabotage and family betrayal, apparently unaware that his own documented behaviors had created the situation requiring explanation. "What the hell did you do to my party?" Grant demanded, his voice carrying the familiar combination of rage and victimhood that had characterized our relationship since childhood. Half the guest list just canceled, and Sunset Ridge is asking questions about deposit refunds because people are calling them directly about some kind of family scandal. His subsequent messages revealed the financial implications of reputation damage in real time. The country club required full payment regardless of cancellation circumstances. The catering company demanded compensation for last-minute changes. The live band expected their contracted fee despite event cancellation. Grant's elaborate celebration had transformed into an expensive lesson about consequences meeting poor planning and documented irresponsibility. My mother's voicemails provided the most psychologically revealing content, demonstrating how someone who had never faced social consequences for favoritism processed public exposure of her documented behaviors. Her first message opened with confused hurt rather than acknowledgement of wrongdoing. "I don't understand why you would share private family matters with people outside our circle," she explained, her voice trembling with genuine bewilderment. "Families should handle these situations internally instead of airing personal conflicts in public forums." The progression through her remaining messages showed dawning recognition that her Facebook post about wishing I could have joined Grant's party to help coordinate had revealed family dynamics she had never intended to expose publicly. The phrase that seemed innocuous within our established pattern looked damaging when viewed by people outside our dysfunction system. Her final voicemail captured complete emotional breakdown as social consequences materialized in ways she had never experienced. "I'm locked in the bathroom crying because I can't face the neighbors," she sobbed. Mrs. Patterson called asking if it was true that we abandoned your birthday dinner, and I didn't know how to explain without making everything sound worse. The satisfaction of hearing my mother finally face accountability for decades of favoritism felt more profound than any birthday celebration could have provided. Her tears represented recognition that actions carried consequences beyond our family's protective bubble of enablement and denial. Dad's two messages stood out for their unprecedented emotional content, considering his typical delegation of family crisis management to Mom's expertise. His voice carried bewilderment that his business reputation might suffer from association with documented family dysfunction. Your mother is inconsolable and I'm getting calls from colleagues asking about family stability, he explained with unusual vulnerability. I never realized how our family decisions might look to outsiders who don't understand the complete context of sibling relationships and celebration coordination. By message 15, the voicemails had devolved into desperate pleas for crisis management assistance from the same family members who had dismissed my birthday celebration as inconsequential obligation. They needed my organizational skills, my professional expertise, my strategic thinking to resolve problems created by their own documented choices to prioritize Grant's drama over my milestone achievement. As sunset painted my kitchen walls with warm light, I finished listening to David's 18th and final voicemail, delivered with the exhausted desperation of someone who had finally grasped the scope of consequences his actions had generated. The phone remained silent afterward, no longer buzzing with urgent demands for my attention and problem-solving capabilities. I retrieved the leftover tiramisu cake from my refrigerator, the same dessert that had sat untouched during my solitary birthday celebration at Bella Luna weeks earlier. Each bite carried symbolic significance as I reclaimed the sweetness that had been denied during my actual milestone birthday while my family chose Grant's competing entertainment over honoring my 40 years of life and achievement. The quiet in my house felt profound and healing, broken only by the sound of my own satisfied breathing and the distant hum of suburban evening activities. For the first time in decades, I experienced complete freedom from family obligations, crisis management expectations, and the exhausting emotional labor of coordinating everyone else's happiness while neglecting my own dignity and self-respect. The following weeks revealed the true power of strategic absence applied with professional consistency. When David requested coordination of Tiffany's school activities, I remained buried in client presentations for my rapidly expanding business. The Meridian Healthcare campaign had evolved into a comprehensive rebranding partnership that required my complete professional attention and creative energy. Grant's desperate calls for assistance with loan applications and financial damage control met my permanently inflexible schedule. The fiscal consequences of his canceled party had apparently created serious problems requiring professional consultation that he could no longer expect to receive as free family charity work. My mother's suggestions about organizing annual family reunion logistics encountered work obligations that materialized like protective shields around my time and energy. Each refusal was delivered with professional politeness that made accusations of spite impossible while maintaining absolute boundaries about my availability for voluntary family coordination services. 3 months after my strategic victory, I established myself in an expanded home office space, reviewing proposals from new clients who valued my strategic thinking and creative vision enough to compensate me appropriately for expertise my family had consistently taken for granted. Blackstone Tech had requested leadership of their entire digital marketing strategy, recognizing abilities that my relatives had never bothered to acknowledge or appreciate. My professional success no longer represented a resource to be shared with Grant's next inevitable business failure or family crisis requiring outside intervention. The marketing consultancy I had built through competence and dedication belonged entirely to me, defended through boundaries I should have established decades earlier but had finally learned to maintain through documented evidence of their necessity. The woman who had spent years coordinating everyone else's happiness while sacrificing her own needs and dignity had finally learned to prioritize her own worth and professional accomplishments. The smile on my face as I reviewed client contracts and strategic planning documents belonged entirely to me, earned through expertise that was finally being valued by people who understood its true importance and were willing to compensate me accordingly for the knowledge and skills I provided. If this story of strategic revenge had you captivated from start to finish, hit that like button right now. My favorite moment was when she deployed that perfectly crafted email with clinical precision, watching 18 missed calls accumulate while sipping wine. What was your most satisfying scene? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Want more compelling stories of justice and transformation? Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads.